Welcome back to Conservative Cat, where we claw through the truth. We claw through and we get to the truth and we claw through the chaos, the nonsense. And I've got so many stories for you today. We are going to be looking at the sneaky budget, the sneaky Illinois budget, and the sham votes. The Illinois Republicans have decided to fight back in court. So we're going to get to that, plus Illinois and the nuclear power struggle, energy, politics, big tech, all of it. You won't want to miss it this show. Happy Friday to you. It's Friday, and I'm so excited to talk about the Illinois treasurer because, of course, he's going to stick his little nose in here and chime in about Trump's big, beautiful bill. Steve Bannon was right, by the way, and I was right about Elon Musk. I've always talked about how Elon Musk, I don't trust him. And I know that this is going to sound maybe naive or, I don't know, like very broad brush, but Elon Musk, he's not a Christian. Okay? He says that he's a cultural Christian. And I get it, maybe he's trying to figure out his personal faith, and I don't know what his personal convictions are, or his personal faith really exactly is, so I don't live inside him, right? But Elon Musk has come out publicly, talked about how he's an atheist, and has talked about how he's this cultural Christian, and that he believes in the values of Christianity, but he's not professing Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And he said that, oh yes, the values of Christianity, that should be something that's a staple here in America. And I don't trust somebody who doesn't have convictions. I'm sorry, but you're either in, you're out. You're not going to do this whole 1 foot in, 1 foot out nonsense. And I've always told you to be very skeptical of Elon Musk. And you won't want to miss it because later in the show, David Paul Blumenshine from the DPB Show will be joining me as a guest star in the 7 o'clock hour. So welcome back. We're going to claw through this chaos. This is yet another example of big government at its worst. It was 3,300 pages, I think, this budget. And to put this into perspective for you, if you were to go print this at a FedEx office, it would have costed you $870, something like that, to print the budget. Okay, so they crammed this budget through like it was like one of those terms of services pages. Do you get those when you download a new app? You'll get the terms of services, and then you got to click the boxes, and you're supposed to read them, but nobody really reads them. That's kind of like what this is. It's like the terms of service policies that these big tech media companies want you to read when you sign over your rights, sign over your privacy. So you've heard that right. Several Republicans, they are going official with this. They're suing to stop the state's newly adopted budget. Not because they hate roads or schools or whatever the left is going to come up with. State Senator Andrew Chesney, he's leading the charge on this. Whatever they come up with, it's not because of that. It's not because they hate the schools and the funding to the schools or the roads or the projects. It's because of how it was passed. So they're going after the process here and how it was passed. So let me break this down for you. Imagine reading War and Peace. This is a very, very thick book about 6 times in one weekend. It's impossible to do. And that's what these state legislators were expected to do when this dropped. 3,300 pages long, this budget, and it was dropped with less than 30 hours left in the legislative session. Folks, that's 1.7 million words. Republicans say that it would have taken at least 70 to 119 hours to read it. Now, there is this woman, she's running for Congress, and she's proposed something that's really incredible. It's a 72-hour act where, hey, it's a federal law that it says state legislators, you have to drop this budget, drop your budgets, and allow state legislators to read them 72 hours in advance at least. So this was dropped with less than 30 hours left in legislative session. And there's something called the 3 readings rule. State Senator Andrew Chesney, he's a Republican from Freeport. He said it best. He says, quote, from the center square, Democrats have a long tradition of short-circuiting the process, brokering deals behind closed doors, then dropping the final bill with no time to mount opposition. So what he's talking about here is this sacred rule in Springfield. You're supposed to read the bill. It's a 3 readings bill. 3 readings rule, and you're supposed to read the bill 3 times in each chamber before it becomes law. So you know what lawmakers do, and I've never seen Republicans do this. I've just seen the Democrats do this. They take these bills that have gone out and been read 3 times, and then they gut and replace. So it's a gut and replace trick that they get really, really good at. You understand why the 3 readings rule is very important. The 3 readings rule allows for your lawmakers to know what's in the bill, and then they can effectively communicate that back to their constituency, and the constituency can respond yes or no. Okay. So they do this gut and replace trick, the Democrats, and they start with a fake placeholder bill. And then boom, last minute, they gut it and they fill it with all kinds of dense legislation. They vote it through and it heads home before anybody notices the smoke. Okay, so it's very, very corrupt. And I don't know, I hope that this makes it through, because it could change the state legislature and how they do things there. If a judge says, hey, you can't do this kind of stuff anymore, that could set a precedent to where they actually, abide by the rules. So a group of Republican fighters, yes, the real ones, Andrew Chesney, Chris Miller, Blaine Wilhauer, Adam Niemerg, Jed Davis, David Freese, and Brad Hellbrook, the real Republicans, they're suing House Speaker Chris Welch and Senate President Don Harmon for violating the Illinois Constitution, not just with this budget, but with other big ticket items, because they did this whole gut and replace trick with the Safety Act. They did it with the state gun ban. They keep doing this with these big bills. I'll never forget, it was a Crohn's and Colitis Awareness Week bill. And then they gutted that, replaced it with an omnibus election bill that actually, and here was the kicker to that omnibus election bill, I think the number was House Bill 4488. It was State Representative West. He brought this forward, and hidden in there in this big election omnibus bill that nobody had really time to read, hidden in there was the increasing of campaign contributions. A party, so the Illinois Democrat Party or the Illinois Republican Party, had increased how much they were able to give in a primary election. And it lifted the caps on that, because previously there was a cap on the primary election, and then they lifted those caps. Now those parties are even more powerful in who gets elected and saying who gets elected, because they can funnel money to the politicians without any sort of cap. So they did this in a gut and replace bill. Their argument, it's not just a technical foul, it's a systemic strategy to cut voters out of the legislating making process. So the lawmaking process, this should be transparent. People should be able to track a bill and to know where it's at, when, what's in it. And it's impossible to do. So if you were to go on ilga.gov today, and that Crohn colitis bill I just talked about, it was House Bill 4488. The title of the bill is Crohn's and colitis still, but you got to click into the full text of the bill to see how they replaced all of the Crohn's and Colitis Awareness Week with an election omnibus. So why does this matter to you? The legislators, if they don't get to read the bills in a reasonable amount of time, they can't properly represent you. The Democrats, they rushed this over 3,000-page budget through without any kind of debate. And they're not doing it to help the families in Peoria or the small business in Lexington. They're not doing it because that's helpful to you. They're jamming it through because there's a lot of pork in there, and they want to dodge accountability. And they want to shut down opposition before it even starts. It's already too far along in this 3 readings rule process to really have any meaningful opposition. So when State Senator Andrew Chesney says, quote, taxpayers lose every time a bill is rammed through like this, he's exactly right, because behind closed doors, they're making deals with your money. Your money is being handed out like Halloween candy to unions, pet projects, and political paybacks. That's what's going on in Springfield. And Republicans are asking the court three things. Declare the budget unconstitutional, stop it temporarily, block it permanently unless it's passed the right way. And there's some time given to the lawmakers to read this thing. So the question remains, will the courts enforce the rules? Legislative rules. That remains to be seen, but one thing's for sure, the lawsuit isn't just about one budget, it's about the integrity of the legislative process in Illinois. There needs to be integrity. Here's the deal. If Democrats can ram through a multi-billion-dollar budget in the dead of night without any kind of discussion or debate, you no longer have a functioning republic. You cannot be properly represented by your state representative if he has no time to read the budget. You have an insiders club writing the rules for everyone else. And kudos to Chesney, Miller, Wilhauer, and the rest of the conservative crew for putting up a big fight here. And that's how you know these people are legitimate Republicans, because they're not just going to sit there and, Republicans are going to, cry and moan about the budget, but these people are actually doing something about it. Now, let's hope the courts remember that the Constitution still means something here in Illinois, and they side with the conservative crew here. Okay, I want to get to this headline. Here's your headline, folks. Illinois generates more electricity from nuclear power than any other state in the United States, and it still isn't enough. Okay, so we generate more electricity from nuclear power than any other state in the United States. And it's still not enough because we're still looking at blackouts and raised rates. So come July, I think that your bill is going to be like 10% higher. ComEd, Ameren, something like that. So Illinois generates more electricity from nuclear than anyone else in this nation. But rather than embrace that success, Illinois lawmakers in Springfield have failed again and again and again to lift the ban on building new large-scale nuclear plants. They won't lift this ban. So today we're going to dive into what's really blocking nuclear growth in Illinois and why it matters to your wallet, your rights, and your future. Now, big tech is actually now stepping in when the politicians have stalled out. So Meta, we're going to crack this thing open. We're going to see that Meta sees the power of nuclear, sees the power of nuclear here in the state of Illinois, and is stepping in when your legislators have stalled out. So let's crack this thing open. Illinois is a nuclear powerhouse, but it's tapped out. Okay, so there's 11 nuclear reactors at 6 plants in Illinois. Illinois is home to 11 nuclear reactors, 6 plants, and those plants generate more than half of the electricity in the state. That's right. Over 50% of Illinois' power comes from clean, reliable, carbon-free nuclear energy. Now, if you care about stable prices, a strong grid, and real environmental results, this should be a no-brainer. But instead of investing in nuclear more, Springfield leaders are stuck in the past, and there's this decades-old moratorium on building new large-scale nuclear plants that's still in place. And Republicans like State Senator Sue Rezin of Morris, she's just been out there pushing for this lift of the ban, and she's calling for nuclear. She's quoted in the Center Square saying, safe, efficient, and essential for stable energy grid and lower cost for consumers. She's right, but her bill failed this last spring legislative session. The bill that would have lifted this ban on building out large-scale nuclear plants, more of them. So what's blocking true progress? And I find it hilarious that the people who call themselves progressive, they're the ones that are being regressive, and they actually don't want to progress with this. So what's blocking the progress here? In 2023, Illinois did lift part of the ban. Okay, so only for small modular reactors, though, SMRs. And I mean, that's a good thing. These are tiny emerging reactors designed for flexibility and fast deployment. So it's a start, but SMRs aren't ready to carry the entire grid. Okay, so SMRs are tiny, and they're really not designed to carry the entire grid, and they lift the ban on those, but we need more. And I guess it's a start, but we need these large-scale plants to power major cities and to power industries, specifically AI. We're going to get to that here in just a second. But what's stopping us? Well, it's the environmentalists. It's the green weenies. Okay, so there's this voice out there, quote Center Square, David Kraft. He's from the Nuclear Energy Information Service. He argues that nuclear can't be expanded safely, especially after a Trump era executive orders that have reduced the red tape at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So those are the people who come out and say, this is, hey, what you have to do if you have a nuclear plant, and they give you all the safety, which is just a lie. We're removing dumb red tape. Okay, so we're reducing red tape so that way these things can function, and they can function well and produce as much energy as possible with also being safe. I'm not against the safety here, but let's be clear. Kraft is saying no amount of oversight is enough. Okay, and that nuclear should be shelved. That's what he's truly saying, and that's what these lobbyists are saying, is that they don't like nuclear at all, despite it being actually the backbone, and most people don't know this, it's the backbone of the Illinois energy system. I just shared with you, it was over 50% of the grid of our electricity comes from nuclear. So in other words, if we can't regulate it to death and make it almost impossible to use, we shouldn't have it at all. So, what does this mean for you? Well, Springfield politicians and anti-nuclear activists argue you're paying the price. Okay, they're arguing, they're going back and forth, and they're barking at each other. And meanwhile, your electric bill just keeps climbing and climbing and climbing, and it's going to continue to climb. I think come July 1st, you're going to see a spike in your energy bill. We've already seen higher electric bills, blackout warnings during peak demand. They're already warning of blackouts. I had one of my, I think it was like I don't know what they're called. They're like it's like on the power lines, and we had a power surge and that popped, okay, because it's in such high demand, and it popped in my local area, and like half the neighborhood was out of power for a few hours. So we're seeing the industry be very uncertain. So ComEd, Ameren, they're uncertain. And that's why they're driving up costs, because they have to go and fix these things that pop. That happens if there's like a random surge of power. If there's not enough, there's a random surge of power and they'll pop. And they'll rolling blackouts. They got to develop the infrastructure, because the grid is we've transitioned a lot of the grid to the green weenie crap, which is the wind and solar. And they're uncertain now. So now they have to drive up the cost, ComEd and Ameren, because they have to ensure that they have the infrastructure to give everyone power. So Illinois is retiring coal. We're blocking new natural gas, and now we're refusing to expand nuclear. So they really just want us on wind and solar, and we know wind and solar doesn't work. You don't need to be a grid engineer to see where this thing ends. If we transition ourselves and we retire coal, we block gas, we don't expand nuclear, we're going to be screwed. We're going to be in an energy crisis, and it's made by the Springfield politicians. And you're the one who's going to be hardest hit, the working families. So I want to get to this. Meta and the Clinton nuclear power deal. Okay, so Clinton, Illinois, it's in central Illinois. And here's the twist, and it's wild. Illinois lawmakers, they're playing politics, and they're playing with the anti-nuclear activists, and they're screaming at ComEd and Ameren like it's their fault, and that they're just being crazy with their predictions, and they're trying to exploit the consumer. Look, folks, you're living it. I'm sure maybe your power's gone out a couple of times, and there's no wind, there's no a storm or anything like that. It was on a bright day where my power went out, and it was because one of these little things at the top, I forget what they're called, the power poles, they just randomly busted because they're overworked. Okay, so you've seen this thing play out, and Meta understands, big tech understands that they need power. Big tech is making moves. Meta, a parent company of Facebook, just signed a 20-year deal with Constellation Energy to keep the Clinton nuclear plant running. the plant was set to shut down in just 2 years. So they were ready to close this thing down, but then Meta came in and they signed a 20-year deal with Constellation Energy to keep that Clinton nuclear plant open and running. Why? Because Meta understands the massive amounts of electricity, stable, carbon-free, around-the-clock power. They understand the need for them because AI requires a lot of energy. Okay, so nuclear is the only realistic option we've got right now, and Meta put it best. Here's their quote. Existing nuclear plants will not be able to stay online indefinitely without partners and investments to help extend existing operating licenses and increase generation capacity. So what's Meta saying there? Translation: when the government fails, the private enterprise, the private companies are going to step up. Okay, and they need investments. And I'm not against this. I think that this is great news. I mean, Meta is a terrible company. It's a big tech company, and I don't trust them. But I also don't trust the government. I probably trust the government less than Meta. Okay, so Meta, they see what Springfield doesn't. You can't run the digital future off windmills and wishful thinking. So the bottom line here is the common sense solution. We need to cut through the fog. Nuclear is the cleanest large-scale energy source we have. It's already providing power to millions of Illinois homes, and it's safe. It's getting safer, and it's essential for both everyday reliability and the future of AI as well, tech, because that's going to be massive amounts of energy that these AI centers, data centers need. So why the resistance? I don't know, because Illinois politics, it's just easier to say no than to progress. And it's hard to stand up to the green special interest. You like China, CCP? CCP isn't pushing nuclear, right? They're pushing the windmills and solar. And it's easier to fearmonger about nuclear waste than it is to tell the truth about what is actually going to happen if we don't see large-scale nuclear power plants being built. We're going to see blackouts. We are not going to have power. This is an energy crisis. And it's easier to fearmonger about, nuclear waste. Oh, it's dangerous. Nuclear is so dangerous. And it's easier to virtue signal with solar slogans and all of that, windmill slogans, than deliver real energy security. We need real energy. My final thoughts here. Illinois needs to lift the moratorium now. We need clean, cheap power and grid reliability. Nuclear isn't an option at this point. It's essential, and the lawmakers in Springfield, if they can't get it done, maybe it's time we replace them. The future doesn't run on feelings. It runs on power. And nuclear is that power. You've heard the fear mongering. Nuclear is dangerous. It's radioactive. It's expensive. It's outdated. Guess what? All of it's nonsense. I do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'm going to take 7 minutes, just 7 minutes of your time. And I want to debunk the myths of nuclear energy, because this was CCP, honestly, propaganda, which is, led to these myths. And I am going to break through these myths about nuclear energy, one radioactive lie at a time. And I'm going to expose exactly where those lies came from. So give me a minute. I'm going to come back. We're going to take 7 minutes. We're going to debunk a lot of these myths in just 7 minutes. And then a little bit later, you won't want to miss it, because the politicians, they're going to be probably big mad that they are fighting, the Illinois Republicans, against this budget, because it was passed in the dead of night and it's 3,300 pages. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Conservative Cat Clips, where we cut through the spin, we call out the nonsense, and we do it all with an unapologetic American flair. I'm your host, Kat, and today we're exposing the truth behind nonprofit organizations and how they helped fuel the border crisis. Let's be real, Joe Biden, he took an exit. But he left a border-sized crater in our national security. And really the biggest, sneakiest players weren't the politicians or the cartels, really. It was nonprofit organizations. Yep, the tax-free do-gooders. They ran logistics for a mass illegal immigration operation. Take Catholic Charities, for instance. Catholic Charities USA, they pocketed $1.4 billion in 2022 alone. More than 60% of that came from government grants, your tax dollars. Then they turned around, used those tax dollars for bus rides, hotel rooms, and legal defense for people who blatantly broke our federal immigration laws. HIAS, they got millions in grants, and then they resettled people deep into the United States. They didn't do any kind of vetting, no transparency, and they had zero regard for the towns impacted by this overrun, like Springfield, Ohio. And just because the administration changed doesn't mean that the nonprofit conveyor belt has stopped. These groups have built a machine, and they built a machine under Joe Biden, and they're still using it to move tens of thousands of people, often under the radar. According to congressional watchdogs, just 4 major national profits helped transport and shelter over 35,000 illegal migrants in a single month. Just 4 helped transport and shelter 35,000 illegal immigrants in a single month. This is insane. That's not charity. That's infrastructure for illegal immigrants, and you helped pay for it. They housed them. They gave them hotel rooms. They gave them legal representation, and you helped pay for it, and you didn't even know it. Whether you knew it or not, they didn't care. Even now, as the new administration tries to restore law and order, these nonprofit organizations, they're lawyering up, they're pushing lawsuits, and they're working overtime to try to stall these deportations and keep the broken pipeline flowing. They want that pipeline to keep flowing, where they take tens of thousands of people and then they give them jobs, and they put them in jobs where they're ultimately going to be used as slave labor, because these companies are going to hang their illegal status over their heads. It's time to cut the cash, investigate the players, pull the nonprofit masks off, and we need to close up the border. We need to pull the nonprofit mask off the open borders agenda. Because if a group is using government money to move, house, and protect people in violation of federal law, that's not compassion, it's collusion. And I'll call it that. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. I'm Kat, reminding you that the border crisis wasn't built by weak presidents. It really wasn't built by Joe Biden. It was powered by rich nonprofits hiding behind halos and hashtags. And our laws were trampled all over, and our communities were overwhelmed. Let's clean it up, and let's do it for real this time and defang these nonprofits.
Sometimes God stops you cold, not with a whisper, with a punch to the soul. Saul wasn't looking for Jesus. He was hunting Christians. He had power, position, and a mission. Then God knocked him to the dirt, a light from heaven, a voice that knew his name. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? That moment wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It was a spiritual ambush. God still works like that. He steps into your mess, interrupts your pride, confronts the man you've become when you're wandered too far. Maybe you're building your own kingdom. Maybe your fists are up, fighting battles God never called you to. Or maybe you're just running hard in the wrong direction. But then comes the voice, clear, heavy, holy. Why are you persecuting me? Jesus doesn't want your behavior fixed. He wants your heart surrendered. Saul didn't get a lecture. He got a mission. Get up, go to the city. You'll be told what to do. That's the way of real manhood in the kingdom. Surrender first, then orders. You don't need every answer right now. You need to obey the voice. Follow the light. Rise up off the dirt and walk the road God lays out for you. Some roads break you to rebuild you, and that's exactly what Jesus wants. You want to train like a warrior? You need fuel like one. Patriot Pump is clean, powerful pre-workout that won't let you quit halfway. Just like the mission God gives you, it's not about the hype. It's about the grit. Fuel up, lock in, get after it.
Good morning. Hey, welcome back to Conservative Cat. If you're not already a Patriot Pump Energy user, I highly recommend you get your supplements today. PatriotPumpEnergy.com. Use promo code ConservativeCat at checkout for $10 off. We're going to bust through these myths in 7 minutes. Give me 7 minutes, and we're going to debunk these myths about nuclear energy, one radioactive lie at a time. And we're going to expose where these lies actually came from. So myth number 1, nuclear is unsafe. First, the big one. Nuclear is dangerous. I want to get to this one and debunk this myth. The media and anti-nuclear groups love to bring up Chernobyl, okay, and Fukushima. Let's talk about the facts, okay? Chernobyl happened in the Soviet Union in 1986. No containment dome. Outdated design, government cover-up. Fukushima, a tsunami took out the power. Tragic, but even then, nobody died from radiation exposure. Okay, so those are the facts. Meanwhile, the United States, we've been running nuclear power for decades without a single major incident causing widespread harm. So today's reactors are built with safety systems, those domes, those automatic shutdowns, steel reinforced containment. So you're more likely to die by a solar panel falling on your head from a roof than nuclear-related energy problems. Okay, so seriously, that's a statistical fact. More people have died from solar panels falling on them. And solar panels also cause all kinds of fires, by the way. Augustana College, Olympia School, Farmington, there was a little farm out there, solar industrial plant. I don't like to call them solar farms because that's leftist language. But they randomly combust these solar panels, and they randomly catch on fire, and they're really hard to put out. Seriously, it's a statistical fact. Solar panels falling on people's head, that kills more people than nuclear energy ever has. So where did this all come from? Hollywood. That's where all the lies come from, Hollywood. Remember the China Syndrome in 1978 or 79? This is a movie. It's a movie that came out 12 days before the 3 Mile Island incident. That was in Pennsylvania. It was perfect timing for panic. It's kind of odd timing, but the China Syndrome, it was a movie, and anti-nuclear groups like Greenpeace ran with it, and they needed a villain for their green energy crusade, and that villain for their green energy crusade is nuclear, and nuclear was an easy target because of the 1979 movie. It was old-fashioned propaganda coming out of Hollywood, 1979. Myth number 2, nuclear is expensive. Well, it costs too much. Building a nuclear plant is expensive. No argument there. But you know what else is expensive? Running wind and solar backup 24/7, because they actually don't work. So you actually need diesel. Those wind turbines, if there's no wind, there's a turbine that causes the propellers to move. They run 24/7. And nuclear plants, they run for 24/7 for 60 to 80 years, and they produce stable, reliable power, and it never stops. Nuclear or wind and solar, they don't work at night. They don't work on cloudy days. So you need a power source to keep them going. And that's actually not green, by the way. It's not as green as people say, because you need diesel to keep these things running. And they have a lower lifetime. So what do I mean by that? The maintenance of these things is very, very costly. Windmills and solar panels, it's a very costly thing to maintain. Sometimes the windmills fall over. Sometimes the propellers don't work. Sometimes the panels catch on fire. So they need backup storage for wind and solar, and it's really hard to maintain these things. So let's not forget the high costs around nuclear is all derived from really regulatory red tape. And that's why President Donald Trump earlier talked about Kraft. He was a green activist, and he says that nuclear, it just can't be expanded safely. And, you know, in a Trump era, his executive orders, he's taking all the safety away from the Nuclear Commission. No. So there's a lot of regulatory red tape, and that's what makes nuclear so expensive, is the regulations that are just not needed. I'm not saying that you don't have the dome, the security dome, the containment domes, things that make sure that people don't die if something were to happen. Environmental lawsuits, endless studies, approval processes. This can be drug out for decades, and there's a lot of red tape for nuclear power plants to even break ground. And that is not a fault of nuclear. That's the fault of bureaucracy. And it's really expensive to break ground on these nuclear plants, because before they even break ground, there's a ton of lawsuits and endless studies done. When we know it's already safe, it's proven. Like I said, our grid, over 50% of our electricity comes from nuclear. Okay, so this is the fault of the bureaucracy. It's not nuclear energy's fault why it's so expensive. It's really just the bureaucracy's fault. We cut the red tape, we cut the cost of nuclear, bottom line. It is expensive to open up a plant, but it doesn't have to be as expensive if we cut out all the BS. So they also say nuclear waste is a crisis. This one really gets me, because they'll say, oh, what do we do with the waste? What do we do with the waste? And the fear peddlers, what they won't tell you is that the nuclear waste produced in the United States could fit in a single football field. Okay, think of the size of a football field, and then stack it up like 10 yards high. That's it. Out of all the nuclear waste ever produced in the U.S. so far today, that's how much nuclear waste there is. So it doesn't produce all that much. When you think about it, of all time, by the way, in the United States, of all of the nuclear waste ever produced. So it doesn't leak, it doesn't glow green, right? Where, nuclear waste is hiding under your bed and it's going to grab you and it's going to change you into this horrific monster. That's just false, and it's media propaganda. And the kicker is that this waste could actually be recycled. It's still full of usable fuel. And there's other countries that recycle this. France does it. We don't. Why? Because the environmental groups have lobbied in Congress to block it from us recycling the waste. That's right. They created the very waste crisis they're complaining about, by the way. We wouldn't even have waste because we could recycle it like France does. Other countries do this. But they created their own waste crisis because they want something to bitch about. Okay, that's what it is. They want something to cry about and complain about, and they created the waste crisis. And really, at the end of the day, there is no crisis because, like I told you, out of all time, nuclear waste, it accounts for a football field size, about 10 yards high. And if you really think about it, that's a very small amount. Myth number 4, nuclear isn't green. You'll have people say that. It's not really clean energy. Please give me a break. Nuclear produces 0 carbon emissions during operation. 0. Okay. And you can't say that about a lot of other things during operation. Now, to build the thing, yes, obviously there's going to be carbon and you have to burn fuel to create these things. But during operations, 0. Meanwhile, so-called green wind and solar, they require a huge, massive land amounts. Okay, so you got to have 300 times more land than a nuclear plant to match that output. So a nuclear plant, if they've got energy outputs, an energy output of a nuclear plant, in order to match that, you have to have 300 times more land than the nuclear plant is using. So that's terrible for the environment because you're taking away trees. You can't put solar panels on trees. So around trees, you've got to have flat land, and you've got to have a lot of flat land. Plus, for solar panels, windmills, things like that, there's rare earth minerals that they're using, specifically with the solar panels. The batteries, there's diesel that you have to use to back up the turbines, the wind turbines. You also have to use diesel when the sun doesn't shine, wind doesn't blow. So these aren't actually green at all. In fact, I'd probably argue that they're probably worse than fossil fuel, I'm going to be honest, because the maintenance, the cost of these things, the danger of these things where the solar panels catch on fire, you have to get the fire trucks out there. You have to get the firemen out there to try to put this thing out, and it's really hard to put out. You have to have a specialist come out and unplug like the converter of these solar panels. It's a real whole mess. But the climate crowd, if they were serious, they'd be demanding nuclear energy, but they're not. And this is how you know it's not really about clean energy. It's about control. It's about control of the grid, control of the industry, and control of you. And really, it's about China. And there are a bunch of Chinese sympathists here in the state of Illinois. So you'll get this other myth number 5. So we're on number 5. We don't need nuclear because we have renewables. Renewables can do it all. Really. Let's take a look over at Germany. Germany is the green darling of Europe. They transitioned off of coal and they shut down their nuclear plants, all of that. And look what they're doing now. Right now, they are turning back to coal and they're burning more coal now. And they were dealing with rolling blackouts because they transitioned everything to solar and wind. California has been begging people to use less power during heat waves, less water, less power, all of it, because they've transitioned everybody off of coal and they're anti-nuclear. And California, the government is begging people to use less power because they can't meet the demand. Renewables don't meet the demand. They never will unless we truly develop these things ourselves. Because let's be honest, these are Chinese things. And if we were to innovate it here in America, we could probably get it done. But it's designed by China to be crappy, like everything. Okay. Where it's just cheap products and they're just pushing them here in the United States. So nuclear is the only energy source that's clean, reliable, scalable, and it's proven. And it's a grown-up solution to our problems. Okay, these babies want baby politicians. They want windmills and solar panels. My final thoughts here. Where did the myths come from? Look at the money. Anti-nuclear groups get millions in donations to push wind and solar and millions of donations from the CCP. They get them to push wind, solar, battery subsidies, electric vehicle batteries, all of that. And Hollywood, a lot of our movies, CCP. A lot of Hollywood films, CCP. It sells fear. Politicians gain control by selling you a crisis, and they offer themselves up as the solution, and the solution is kind of crappy. So nuclear is out there doing what it's always done, powering homes safely, cleanly, and efficiently. It's time to wake up, reject the fear, and demand solutions for energy independence. And that means standing up for nuclear. We got to do it here. All right, I want to shift gears. Let's talk about the big, beautiful bill. The big, beautiful bill. I was right about Elon. I told you guys to be skeptical of him from day one. I've never really liked Elon. I don't trust anybody who doesn't have true convictions. Like I said, he calls himself a cultural Christian, which is just peculiar. It's weird. And that suggests to me that he has no true convictions. And you got to be careful about these types of people. You don't want them in your inner circle. And when Donald Trump, had him in his inner circle during his campaign, I was freaked out. And here's why. I was just waiting for Elon to screw up. He's done a few screw ups, but the $180 billion, by the way, that's over 10 years. That is nothing compared to the big, beautiful bill. The big, beautiful bill compared to the itty bitty bitty Doge cuts. Now, I'm grateful for the Doge cuts. $180 billion over 10 years. It's better than nothing. Although Elon promised that he was going to do $1 trillion, to even at one point saying $2 trillion worth of Doge cuts. He didn't get that. And by the way, the $180 billion, he doesn't even have all the receipts for that, proving that he's going to cut $180 billion, that Doge has found $180 billion. He's only got about 30% of that, even of the $180 billion, he's only got about 30% of those receipts. So it might even be less than that. We don't know. It could be less than the $180 billion. But he's out there screaming about the $1.7 trillion that we're going to save with the big, beautiful bill. Is it a perfect bill? No. But let's get to this, because I want to call out Elon, and I want to call out the Illinois Democrats. They're fear-mongering about this bill, and it's not the best, but it is so much better than what Elon's got going on. And you can't codify the Doge cuts in this bill. Like I said yesterday, the show is archived. It's a reconciliation bill. In order to codify those Doge cuts, you have to wait for the annual appropriations bill, the annual budget bill. Okay, so that's the only way you're going to get those Doge cuts in, because quite literally the rules don't allow for it to be included in the reconciliation bill. And Elon Musk knows that. He's a smart guy. And really what this is about is his EV tax credits and the fact that he didn't get his FAA contract with Starlink. So we're going to get to that here. Oh, boy. All right, let's get into it. Everyone's pretending that this is the apocalypse. It's not. And I really wish that Republicans would fight behind closed doors and not so publicly about this. What Elon is saying, the left is grabbing onto, and they love it. Okay, so that should be something that raises your eyebrows. And I get it. Fox News is going to be out there praising Elon Musk, and you might be watching Fox News. But if you're watching this program, we're just going to give it to you straight. Okay, I'm just going to give it to you straight. I don't like Elon personally. However, the rules are the rules, and this is a reconciliation bill. And under federal budget rules, that means you can't be filibustered in the Senate, simple majority, no procedural tricks, just an up or down vote. And that's how Democrats passed Obamacare, by the way. And Biden passed his bloated spending nonsense, the Inflation Reduction Act, the American Rescue Plan Act. So now it's our turn to pass it through a reconciliation bill. Okay. So here's the headline: 1.6 to 1.7 trillion in spending cuts. Yes, spending cuts. Nobody's talking about that. The CBO's own numbers say it's 1.6 trillion in spending cuts. There's going to be major investments at the border security, military readiness. I think it's like 300 billion is what they've spent on that. And they can do that with reconciliation bills. Outside of that, they can't really spend money in this bill. So when people say Donald Trump is spending money, he's not. Okay, he's spending a little bit for the border and for the military. It's not a spending bill. It's not an appropriations bill. It's a reconciliation bill. And you can do this under national security. Now, number one, people don't realize that you have to spend money a little bit to make money. So in order to secure the border, you have to spend a little bit of money. But guess what? In the long run, that's going to save us a ton of dollars because guess what? You don't have a ton of illegal immigrants fighting with the American citizenry for resources. And the Americans are going to wind up spending more on housing, all of that, because we're not competing for resources. And that's actually going to help our economy, not hurt it. So that's what he's doing. We're also cutting wasteful, fraud-ridden government programs, starting with Medicaid abuse, SNAP abuse, things like that. These mandatory, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. People are not supposed to be on them. We're going to get them off. And you have to have work requirements, which the work requirements are really chill. It's 20 hours a week if you're able-bodied, you're not married, you're single, you're not married, and you're young, and you're not of retirement age. That's it. So there's also going to be these middle-class tax cuts. They say tax cuts for billionaires. We're giving the money back to the American. We're not even really giving money back to the American people. We're keeping the rate the same. So the CBO and these libertarians' logic, they think that they're entitled to your money. And what they're arguing is that the tax cuts are not, they're too much. That's what they're arguing. The tax cuts are too much and they didn't cut spending enough, which is not true because they're not accounting for the taxation. Like when you do tax cuts, people are going to have more money in their pockets and they're going to spend more. Okay, so they're underestimating the revenue that's going to come in from these tax cuts. It's happened historically, and that's why Donald Trump is doing it now with the big, beautiful bill. When you do tax cuts, you see more revenue, actually. And I wouldn't even say that this is a tax cut because, like I said, they're keeping the rate the same. It's bold. They are freaking out. You've got libertarians freaking out about this because nobody's ever said enough's enough. We're not taxing our people into oblivion. Nobody's ever said this, and these tax cuts are risky, but he's doing it unapologetically. And look, Donald Trump he's all about risk, but they're calculated risk. He's not doing it same with the tariffs, right? He was like, oh, the price of everything is going to go up. Prices have gone down since the tariffs. Okay. So he's doing a risky move here, but it's only considered risky by those who believe they're entitled to this money. And if they don't get your money, then they throw a hissy fit. That's really what's happening here, is they think that your money is their money. And they're arguing that it's going to increase the deficit if we keep the tax rate the same, because, oh, God forbid we keep taxes low for Americans. Anyway, so they're all commenting on this. The Illinois Treasurer, Michael Frerichs, he went out there and he declared that 490,000 Illinoisans are going to lose healthcare coverage. Okay, I don't think so. And you would think that the sky is absolutely falling. And now the 490,000 number, maybe that calculation is based off of those people who are abusing the program, which, if we're doing that, we're saving so much money. It's $1.7 trillion that we're saving in this BBB. And people aren't taking that into account. We've made some major cuts here, along with cuts to taxes, but we've made some major cuts. So they did them both at the same time. Anyway, Michael Frerichs, you would think that the sky is falling. Let me translate this to you. The state is no longer going to rake in a ton of Medicaid dollars for people who don't qualify. Okay, so the federal government says, enough, we're not doing this. We're not going to give you all kinds of money to provide people who don't qualify for Medicaid. We're going to make sure the needy actually get care. And we're targeting fraud, waste, and bloated system. We're targeting the system. And we're sick and tired of able-bodied single people making money on these programs or not doing anything to earn these programs. So Frerichs, he wants to scare you, the treasurer, the Illinois treasurer, into thinking that this bill is going to be an attack on rural Illinois. Give me a break. This is not going to be an attack on rural Illinois. Really, it's probably going to attack those in the city, these fat losers that got out of college, obese losers that got out of college, and these feminazis who said, I just want to sit on my butt all day and not do a damn thing and collect all of my Medicaid, get free medical care and everything like that. Although I'm able-bodied and have no children and not married. And I'm not even willing to go work a part-time job. So this is 20 hours a week. That's not even really considered part-time. So, I mean, this is really, really easy work requirement to fulfill in order to get Medicaid. So anyway, billionaires like Elon Musk are having a meltdown. They've called this bill disgusting and a disgusting abomination. Really, Elon? Here's the bottom line, folks. Taxpayer subsidies. He wanted them for electric vehicles. And I love it. There was an article out there, I don't know, a while ago where Elon Musk said, yeah, we should get rid of the EV tax credits. He was quoted in Forbes saying that. But guess what he did just as early as April of 2025? His company, Tesla, which is the only company worth anything, Tesla, they went and they lobbied $240,000 or something like that in the spring this year to try to put the EV credits back into the big beautiful bill. They wanted the EV tax credits in there. Guess what? It didn't happen because the bill was crafted by some of the most conservative members of Congress. And let's not forget Starlink. Starlink was gunning for a federal contract through the FAA. And guess what Donald Trump said? He said, no, we can't do it. Or the administration said, no, we can't do it because of technology or technological reasons, but we also can't do it because it looks like a conflict of interest, Elon. I'm not awarding you a contract because you gave me money during my campaign. I'm not going to give you a contract because that's going to look terrible. It looks like a conflict of interest. And to his credit, Mike Johnson, he didn't take this personally. Elon Musk going out and saying, oh, this bill is an abomination. Mike Johnson said it beautifully. He said, no, Musk is flat out wrong. And he is. He's being a baby because he's going to lose his government handouts. And I'm sorry, Donald Trump is reprioritizing spending across the board, and EV handouts, they don't help the American people. They did that in the Inflation Reduction Act. The electric vehicle tax credit was $7,500 or something like that. Yeah. And guess what Ford did? Ford raised the cost of their electric vehicles by $8,000 because they knew everybody had tax credits for $7,500. So you see how inflation happens when you give out money in the form of a handout. Welcome to America, Elon, where the working class comes first and not the Silicon Valley subsidy class. And I'm excited about this. I am. I was waiting for Elon to screw up because I don't like the guy. There's something off about him. And now, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm broad brushing it or whatever, but he posted a picture of himself and he quite literally was in satanic garb. So I'm a Christian conservative in that order. And I don't know about you, but it really is off-putting when somebody is dressed in satanic garb. If you're a Christian, you get it. It's off-putting. And I really didn't like Elon being in Trump's inner circle because he's not a godly man. All right, I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat. Enjoy these Conservative Cat clips here. Welcome back to Conservative Cat Clips, where we claw through the lies and we lay out the truth. No filter, no fluff. I'm your host, Kat, and we're tackling the abortion debacle today, but this time we're pulling back the curtain on abortion's ugly origin story. Let's talk about Margaret Sanger, founder of what would become Planned Parenthood. The left treats her like some sort of feminist hero, but they conveniently leave out where she was a eugenicist and she spoke at KKK rallies and she wanted to, quote, weed out the unfit. Her words, not mine, folks. In a 1938 letter, Sanger wrote about her plans to target Black communities, and I quote, "We do not want the word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population." Does that sound like they're trying to hide something, doesn't it? Planned Parenthood was built on this ideology, and Sanger didn't want to empower women. She wanted to control population growth, particularly among minorities, the poor, and the disabled, anyone she and her elite pals deemed less desirable. That's who she wanted to weed out. And guess what? The legacy still haunts the abortion industry today. Don't believe me? Look at the numbers. Black women make up about 13% of the population, but they account for nearly 40% of all abortions. You think that's by accident? No, ma'am. That's what's called targeted marketing and deception. They're marketing abortion to Black women. So while the media glamorizes abortion as freedom, let's be real. It started with a woman who thought freedom meant eliminating the weak. And while the left tears down statues of long dead so-called racists, they keep handing out awards named after Margaret Sanger. Hypocrisy much? The left is tearing down these statues, but yet they're handing out awards named after Margaret Sanger. Now, I know some folks are going to say, well, that was a long time ago, Kat, sure, but Planned Parenthood is still the nation's largest abortion provider. They're still planting clinics in these low-income minority neighborhoods, and they're marketing abortions to minorities. And they were raking in $500 million of taxpayer dollars, by the way, every year. And just until recently, President Donald Trump signed this executive order to end the federal taxpayer dollars to fund and promote elective abortion. The order recognizes that for nearly 5 decades, Congress enacted a little something called the Hyde Amendment. It's a series of additional laws to protect taxpayers from being forced to pay for abortion. That's what the Hyde Amendment does. Contrary to this longstanding common sense policy, the previous administration, Joe Biden, they dedicated all kinds of federal funding to elective abortion and a wide variety of government programs. This isn't about women's health. It's about politics, power, and profit. The future, it's up to us. In a post-Roe world, gives us this chance to right historic wrongs. We need laws that protect the unborn, support women, and finally shut down the lie that abortion is some kind of virtue. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. I'm Kat, reminding you that the truth has claws and history doesn't lie. Margaret Sanger's past isn't just history, it's the foundation of a system that we are fighting today. Stand tall, speak out, and choose life. Good morning. Welcome back to Conservative Cat. I so do appreciate you being here this morning. You've got options, and I'm so honored that you chose Conservative Cat. It's a daily show, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Central Time. I do like to take chats on Friday. So if you throw it in the comments section, share your feelings because it's Feelings Friday. Share your feelings about what's going on in the news. I love this comment. People with no God are open to demons. They go in and go out whenever the demon wants to. And Elon's got to be careful because he's open for a demon to come in. And you're exactly right. Yes, I think that it's odd that Elon Musk posted himself. It was a profile picture. If you guys forget it, I mean, it was a big deal. And he's all about AI. He's all about robotics and the advancement of technology. It's prophesied in the Bible that when technology advances at a rapid rate, that's when you know the end is near. So I don't like the satanic garb that he posted a picture of himself in. He also has come out and said that he's a cultural Christian, which I think is extremely dangerous because this is the idea that you can be a Christian without actually professing Jesus Christ as your Lord and as your Savior, and that he actually died for your sins, and that he was sent by God, his one and only Son, sent by God. So he doesn't believe any of that. I think that Elon has professed multiple times that he is an atheist and doesn't exactly believe that there's a higher power. Now, do I know Elon's personal faith? Absolutely not. All I know is what he has said publicly. And when you have somebody like that, it's very dangerous. I think it's more dangerous than the atheist who just says, oh, there's no God. I think it's even more dangerous when you've got somebody out there saying, I'm a cultural Christian, I believe in all of the values of Christianity, but I'm just going to be selective with it, and I'm not going to profess Jesus as Lord and Savior. Like I said, don't know his personal faith. I'm not Elon, but I know what he has said publicly, and based off that, I don't trust him. Good morning, Lisa. Appreciate you being here. I do have to agree with you on Elon. Donald Trump, this is from Mark, is willing to sacrifice for the good of the country. Musk seems like he's not willing to sacrifice anything for the country. Yeah, and this is the guy who fought for EV tax credits, and really I think that's what this is all about, is the EV tax credits not getting in there. And I know that sounds crazy, but if you look at Elon Musk's portfolio, he's a very rich man, but a lot of his companies are startups. A lot of them haven't really, I mean, they've taken off, but they're not as big as you'd think. And Tesla really is his baby. Tesla is the one that is rooted, and it makes sense because it's the oldest, right? Or one of the older companies. But Donald Trump said, I'm taking a risk. We are finally going to keep these tax rates. By the way, they're not even cutting the rate. They're just keeping the rate the same. We're going to provide tax cuts to the American people, and I don't care what anybody says about it. And he's being a very risky president, and I love it. I want to get to one more comment, and then we're going to get into the rest of the show. I think Trump and Elon should make up. This is trivial. They are friends. They should agree to disagree and move on. Yeah. Well, really, and I think that the crux of the disagreement here is that Elon doesn't quite understand the benefit of tax cuts. So everybody's freaked out because they're like, okay, the tax cuts, that means we're not going to have enough revenue. We're not cutting it up, but this is 1.7 trillion in cuts. But I'd love to say Elon doesn't understand, but I know he's a smart guy. We all know that he's a smart guy. So what really is it? I think it's because he's butthurt about the about the EV tax credit, but also the Starlink contract with the FAA. This is all fact checkable. Fact check me on it. He didn't get it. And then also Donald Trump recently withdrew a nominee, Musk ally for a NASA role. His name was Jared. And I don't think that Musk was very happy about that. So yeah, I get it. You want them to make up, but I have been waiting for this to happen because I really don't like Elon. I don't trust him at all. And I really was disappointed to see. And I am grateful to Elon for the platform X. I'm grateful that he made some cuts. He didn't make as much as he had originally promised. He said that he was going to do 2 trillion Doge cuts, but we're looking at 180 billion over 10 years. And even that, it might not be exact. It might be less than that because he can't account for like 60% of those cuts via the receipts. And So I don't know. I hope that Elon just goes away into the ether. But I doubt it. He's going to scream on social media. He's having a little meltdown like a little girl. And LaHood, he had said some things about the Big Beautiful Bill. He voted for the Big Beautiful Bill. Darren LaHood, he defended it. And he said these are provisions that are going to help the working people that President Donald Trump wanted to prioritize. And he's right. The bill is about giving back to the American people, the working class. It's not about getting the rich richer so they can get another yacht. Okay, this is about helping families afford groceries, and these massive tax cuts are going to help people breathe again. Okay, and when people can breathe again, you're going to see the revenue go up. You're going to see people buying more houses, cars, things like that, and you're going to start seeing sales tax, that revenue that comes in via the sales tax and other places. You're going to see that revenue go up. It's going to help the economy, and I think we should not apologize for cutting taxes. And that's what Elon and libertarians like Rand Paul want you to do. They want you to be apologetic and say, I'm sorry for cutting taxes. Because these people believe truly that the American taxpayer money is theirs. And I gave this example yesterday. If I steal $20 out of your wallet next week, and I say that I'm not going to steal $20 out of your wallet next week, but I say that I lost $20, it's because I believe that that wallet is mine. That's essentially what this is all about. It's an ideological principle problem that they're at, and they really just Elon needs to just pipe down and realize his ideology is not that of President Donald Trump. Donald Trump does not believe that that money is his. And the conservative members of Congress who created this bill, they don't believe that the American taxpayer money is theirs automatically. And you see this at a local level too. A lot of local politicians will say this. They're like, oh, well, we didn't raise your taxes come property tax time. Well, the rate stayed the same and the assessed values went up, so the government collected more money. So my taxes did go up and you collected more money. See, if you actually wanted to cut my taxes, you'd lower the rate and then you'd collect less money. But they don't hold that belief. They don't believe that that money is your money. Yeah, for far too long, we've watched Washington operate on autopilot, more spending, more programs, more bureaucrats. And every time we try to rein it in, you get called extremist or you get called crazy. And yeah, it's a bold move because nobody's ever done it. And this is risky. But Donald Trump, his entire president, like if I had to sum up his presidency so far, risky. He doesn't care. He has nothing to lose at this point. And he is going to do whatever it takes to correct this course and to put this ship back and to sail the ship on the right track, put this train on the right track again. That's what he's doing. And Trump didn't go to Washington to babysit the bureaucracy. He came to bulldoze it. And that's what he's doing. And this bill isn't perfect, but it's a giant step in the right direction because what we're doing with this bill is securing the border. We're rebuilding the military. When China is a massive threat, by the way, a couple of shows ago, a couple days ago, you guys can find it archived on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble. You can find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Conservative Cat. China's growing in Latin America, Africa. They've got these military ports. They're doing debt trap. They're trapping these countries into debt and giving them loans for infrastructure. And in exchange, they come in and take over these countries essentially quietly. And that's a big threat. So we need the money for the military. We do. And we need to protect the taxpayer. That's what this bill does. And we're saying no more blank checks to the programs that fail to deliver. Or they fail to deliver for the most needy, Medicaid, Social Security, because there's so many instances of abuse and fraud going on in these programs. And we said no to that. So we're not going to appease Elon Musk. And remember, folks, Elon Musk is being heralded as a hero by the Democrat machine and by the Democrat media right now. They love that he's doing this. So here's my message to the U.S. Senate. Pass the BBB, get it on the president's desk. Show the American people that you've got guts. That's what this is about. It's about guts. And Donald Trump has got guts. Elon Musk, Rand Paul, a lot of these losers, they don't have them, and they don't want to take the risk for the American people. Donald Trump is willing to take that risk, and he knows that the American people are going to have more money in their pocket, and they're going to be able to breathe. And when you allow the American taxpayer to breathe, they're going to spend more money, and you're not going to have as big as a revenue problem as you think you're going to have. All right, let's get to Kieran Jean-Pierre. She announced that she left the Democrat Party. Of course she did. And of course she came out with a new book. We're going to get to that. Plus a police department holding a taxpayer-funded drag queen celebration for Pride Month. Yes, this police department is in Canada, so we'll visit with our Canadian neighbors here in just a second. And a Democrat congresswoman, she is demanding that we stop deporting illegal immigrants because, quote, we need the illegal immigrants to wipe our asses. That's what she said. I wish I was lying. I'm going to get to all of it here. Let's get to Kieran Jean-Pierre. Kieran Jean-Pierre, former White House press secretary. Some of you may remember her as America's least favorite DEI pick. She's my least favorite DEI pick. She came out and she announced that she's an independent now, and she announced that she wrote her own book or released her new book. It's called Independent, A Look Inside a Broken White House Outside the Party Lines. Take a listen to this. Here we go.
Personally, I think what was the toughest thing to see in the 3 weeks was there was a disconnect for me, what was happening with leadership in the Democratic Party and how it was truly, as my former colleague, communications director, Ben LeBolt said, it was a firing squad. And I had never seen anything like it before. I'd never seen a party do that in the way that they did. And it was hurtful and sad to see that happening. A firing squad around a person who I believe was a true patriot, a person who I believe did everything that he can for this country, a person who I believe, as I mentioned before, has done more in one term than most presidents had done in 2 terms, historical things. And I was shocked by what I was seeing.
And Karine, just to clarify, it's your other Democrats and Democratic leadership coming out against Biden.
Yep, I had never seen anything like that. That was, if you're asking me, the thing that I saw in those 3 weeks, that was shocking. Shocking. And instead of coming together to really be unified and trying to figure out how do we save our democracy, how do we fight back, that's what I was seeing. And, you know, that's what we decided to do for 3 weeks. And, you know, it was truly, truly unfortunate. And I think it hurt us more than I think folks realized to have done that.
And I know we're coming.
Okay. So that's Kieran Jean-Pierre. She's got a new book out, according to Fox News. Until January 20th, I was responsible, she says, for speaking on behalf of the President of the United States. At noon on that day, I became a private citizen who, like all Americans and many of our allies around the world, had to contend with what was to come next for our country. I was determined that the danger we face as a country requires freeing ourselves of boxes. We need to be willing to exercise the ability to think creatively and plan strategically. Jean-Pierre, she shared this news in a video posted on Instagram. Okay, she's probably taken a page out of Jake Tapper's book. She's a grifter. Okay, she's trying to make money off of this book, and I'm sure nobody's going to buy it. Anybody sane is not going to buy this book. And she explained that the new book was her answer to a way forward for Americans who feel distraught, really for Americans who suffer from TDS, watch too much CNN, boomers who watch too much CNN. I love the elderly people, but you watch way too much CNN and cable TV. You got to get off that, and you got to get on alternative news sites because they're lying to you about Donald Trump. Okay, so she wrote this book for the people who suffer from TDS, and she says, quote, "What I have decided to do and what I've really thought long and hard about is to follow my own compass." Aw, how cute. that's what I've done with this book. And that's what this book does. She says, urging Americans to be nonpartisan. No, I'm sorry. But if you're for Drag Queen Story Hour, if you're for transing the kids, if you're for China and not tariffing China when they're out there enslaving the Uyghurs for companies to build their electric vehicle batteries, and they're taking countries away like Africa and South America, if you're for all of that, no, we are partisan. Well, I am not like you, and I don't want to be like you. So there is a divide. If you think that it's okay to say you're at the wrong rally when somebody shouts out that Jesus Christ is Lord, Kamala Harris, we are not the same. And it is okay to not be the same as your neighbor. It is okay to not hold the same beliefs that they hold and to speak out against those beliefs. She's trying to urge Americans to not be partisan, and she wants them all to be a part of this group think. That's what it is. And this is the kind of nonsense, by the way, we had to deal with when we had this woman behind that podium. Never forget this. Here we go.
Just to clarify, so you're saying that the president and vice president believe that former President Donald Trump should be toning down his rhetoric?
So I'll say this. President Biden has been clear-eyed about the threat that the former president represents to our democracy. He's been clear-eyed about that.
Just to clarify, so you're saying that the
Never forget. And don't forget about this one. Hold on. I got another one for you. We can't forget what Jean-Pierre did behind that podium. She is a liar, and she lied to the American people about the mental state Joe Biden was in. Take a listen.
There seems to be a sort of rash of videos that have been edited to make the president appear especially frail or mentally confused. I'm wondering if the White House is especially worried about the fact that this appears to be a pattern that we're seeing more often.
Yeah, and I think you all have called this the cheap fakes video, and that's exactly what they are. They are cheap fakes video. They are done in bad faith, and some of your news organization have been very clear, have stressed that these the right-wing critics of the president have a credibility problem because of the fact checkers have repeatedly caught them pushing misinformation, disinformation, and so we see this, and this is something coming from your part of the world, calling them cheap fakes and misinformation. And I'll quote the Washington Post, where they wrote about this, and they said how Republicans use misleading videos to attack Biden in a 24-hour period. And to their credit, we have a conservative Washington Examiner did call them out as well, calling out the New York Post. Ironically, several recent cheap fakes actually attacked the president for thanking troops. That is what they're attacking the president for. Both in Normandy, this happened, and again in Italy. And I think that it tells you everything that we need to know about how desperate Republicans are here. And instead of talking about the president's performance in office, and what I mean by that is his legislative wins, what he's been able to do for the American people across the country, we're seeing these deep fakes, these manipulated videos, and it is, again, done in bad faith.
So remember, the videos, these were not manipulated videos. These were actual videos of Joe Biden falling down the stairs, and people reported on that, and she scolded them and said, stop sharing deep fake videos, cheap fakes. She was there to simply check a box, okay, despite claiming that that's not what she represents. She is a DEI hire, okay, and she was not put there because of her qualifications, but she played a role in pushing the idea that anyone she disagrees with or anyone you disagree with is a threat to democracy. Okay, so she's calling for unity, she's calling for partisanship and she's an independent now, and she left the Democrat Party. Okay, but you were the biggest, if not the biggest, contributors to, one, the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental health. Two, you called everybody a threat to democracy whom you disagreed with and accused them of sharing fake videos when clearly they weren't. It was Joe Biden. He was a sleeping potato. He fell asleep at conferences and with world leaders and fell down the stairs. And she wants to claim she's leaving the Democrat Party because she wants to bring this country together. Give me a break. You are a total liar. You were the biggest divider when you were behind that podium as the White House press secretary. So she and Tapper, they've mastered this thing. It's called grifting. They're dodging accountability. They're playing victim, and they're profiting off playing victim with these book deals. And they were the biggest perpetrators of this scandal that Joe Biden was not well. We know that he had to have had cancer at least during his presidency, if not before his presidency, during the campaign of 2020. He had to have had this aggressive cancer, bone cancer, or what is it? I think it's prostate cancer. Yeah, prostate cancer that seeped into his bones. He had to have had this condition prior to him announcing it for years. And doctors have come out and said that, and they played a role in covering this up. She had to have known, Jake Tapper had to have known. They were the biggest perpetrators of that cover up. And then also, they also were the biggest dividers. And what do I mean by that? They called everybody a threat to democracy. And I truly believe they were one of the biggest perpetrators to causing the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania against President Donald Trump. All right, I want to get to my very special guest, David Paul Blumenshine. He's joining me here on the program. Good morning, David. How are you? Oh, having an issue with sound. Testing. Let's see.
That's me, Kat. That's not
That's
you.
That's you. There you are.
That was me. I sometimes don't always hit the right buttons, the red button. Kat, let me just start over. Happy D-Day, conservative Kat.
Yeah, D-Day. D-Day, Normandy.
D-Day, Kat.
There's actually
D-Day.
clip. I'll have to pull it. Donald Trump, he had the German chancellor there in the Oval, and he was talking about how D-Day really wasn't a great day for you. That's what Donald Trump said while he had the
That's priceless.
Overall. So,
That's priceless. D-Day wasn't a very good day for you. That didn't work out so well.
And he was just so thrown back by that. The chancellor was just like,
he's probably going, you got to be kidding me.
Well, he goes, whoa. All right. Well, good morning, David. We got so much to cover. I'm going to try to pull up that German chancellor video. But first, I do want to have you react to this. We chatted about this on the phone the other day. And this is McClure, State Senator Steve McClure. And he was talking about this bill. It's called House Bill 2397. Okay, so House Bill 2397. What it does, let me pull this up here. Hold on. It mandates that the Department of Corrections has to annually report hospice and palliative care within its facilities. So what kind of hospice care are you doing? Okay, sounds like a great bill. It was criticized by Senator Steve McClure because it's named after a guy named Eddie Thomas. He's a convicted murderer who threw his victim, the guy he murdered, down an elevator shaft. Okay, or the person he murdered down an elevator shaft. So we are going to play this. This is a TikTok that Senator Steve McClure posted. Here we go.
A person head first down an elevator shaft, murdering them. I think there has to be a point in this chamber when you recognize that it's very tough. We've got all these bills to try to rename roads for people who died overseas in the military. We've got now IDOT taking away the memorials for DUI victims' families that are there to try to keep the memories of their loved ones still alive. We can't memorialize these people, but we're going to have a guy who is a gang member who intentionally murdered somebody by pushing them head first down an elevator shaft. I think that's wrong. And I think if this is going to be done, the least that we can do as a body is make the victim's family aware of what's happening and allow them to make a statement or give some sort of a position. Can any of you imagine if your family member was murdered by someone and there's no road named after the family member that was murdered, there's no law to support that family member? I'm guessing there was probably not even a resolution for a celebration of life for this person, but the murderer gets their own act in our state's laws permanently. That's wrong. I urge a no vote.
Okay. So that was State Senator Steve McClure. This was the House bill that seeks to mandate the Department of Corrections. And we all know that this is just a silly bill. They're not going to actually do it, the Department of Corrections, because it's bureaucracy. But they are supposed to report on hospice care within its facilities. That's what this bill does. But really took issue with more so the fact that it was named after Eddie Thomas, who threw somebody down an elevator shaft head first and killed that individual and served lots of time. So, David, why don't you react to that for me, please, and tell me,
Well, I'll tell you right now, Steve, you might want to go back to theatrical lessons, because you sure didn't give a compelling argument for your position. I mean, I would say milquetoast. I mean, bottom line is, Steve, you know it, I know it, everybody that resides in the state of Illinois knows it. We are broken. We are spiritually broken, morally broken, fiscally broken. And when Republicans take to the podium and they aren't literally just going all in nuclear, it just bores me. It's like, Steve, this is an issue that you should be so impassioned by, but it should be more it's really just a symptom of what's wrong with Illinois, because what's wrong with Illinois is wrong, unfortunately, with Washington, D.C. These representatives have gotten into a system and it's just mere gamemanship. Who's really impacted is the victim of this heinous, violent crime. The fact that anyone would even give any consideration to naming a bill after them goes to show you, well, it comes from the party that celebrates violence, kill, stealing, and destroying. So we shouldn't expect anything different. And that should be the message. If Steve wanted to take to the podium, I think he should have, taken to the podium and just said, are you kidding me? You people continue to applaud murderers. You celebrate murder. You celebrate death. You celebrate crime. You get upset when we arrest criminals.
yeah.
I mean, but more impassioned, Kat, don't you think? I mean, he sounded like the kid that was giving his speech 101. He just didn't do a lot of but he did. He speaks eloquently. I mean, I know Steve. He wouldn't be my senator. I'd work my tail off to make sure that somebody ran against him that was a true conservative and was concerned about returning the values to the state of Illinois of the land of Lincoln.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I'm against this bill. I mean, for multiple reasons. But the main reason that he gave was that it was named after Eddie Thomas.
Yeah.
But you could debunk this bill easily, just from the substance, not even just the name, the substance itself. The Department of Corrections, they've got a lot of problems, and you could just begin to ramble off all of the problems within the Department of Corrections, where there are inmates who are attacking correctional officers. There aren't enough reports done about the work that they're doing, and the Department of Corrections is run by a DEI hire, 100%, and they need to get her out of there. And he could have attacked the substance of this bill as well as attacking the name of the bill as well. But you're right, Steve McClure, and a lot of these Republicans will get out there and they'll do kind of like showboating. That's what I call it, showboating. And he did this another time where he held a press conference about Lincoln's New Salem historic site, Petersburg.
Yeah.
So the Illinois
Great place. Go visit it. Everybody should go.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many people actually visit it today. They couldn't answer that question when they were asked, but the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, they said, we need $19 million more to restore this site, this historical site. Given the technology, the digital space, I mean, a lot of people get their history in a different, same with the public libraries, right? You're spending 25 million in Bloomington to build out a public library. And it's like, how many people actually go? You know, we're in a different time period and we have to progress, not regress. And I find it so interesting that they say, oh, we're progressive. But State Senator Steve McClure, he wanted a bill to appropriate $5 million to the site. And then there was a bill to kind of create a new commission, a new board, you know, because they do this all the time. But I did some digging and it turns out, you know, and this is where they said, so the New Salem Lincoln League president, Gina Wolter, she had said, oh, well, we don't know our visitorship. That's like essentially, she was asked about her visitor. She said years ago it was 400,000 per year. And she goes, I have no idea what it is now. And it's like, wait a second, you're the president of the actual like New Salem Lincoln League and like the site here, and you're in charge of it, and you have no idea what your visitorship is. So why would we think 19 million is what they wanted? You know, the INDR, 5 million was what McClure was trying to secure. But it's like, why would we spend millions on something that maybe 4 or 5 people go to? We don't know, because she didn't know the visitorship. And why would we give you money if you're not even willing to disclose what kind of visitorship? Why would the taxpayers give you money when you're not willing to disclose that? One, it's not transparent. Two, it's probably not worth it if you're not willing to disclose it. But get this, the Capital Development Board database showed nearly $500,000 of taxpayer funds, about $1 million, went to specifically a roof replacement. Now, this is interesting because here's what State Senator Steve McClure said at the time during this legislative session. He talked specifically about the roof caving in, right? And that's what he said that was needed for the repair. So it's like, wait a second, just, you know, it was in 2021, they got $500,000 to replace the roof and they didn't replace it. So if I give you this money, are you actually going to do it? But it gets to the crux of the issue, which is, I what's going on here, Steve? Right? That like we're supposed to be conservative, and if they're not willing to share your visitorship with you, why are you doling out or fighting for taxpayer dollars to go to this place? So anyway, that was State Senator Steve McClure, and after that moment, when I was like, okay, this is a complete joke. You're holding this press conference to get this money, but we know that that money is probably going to go to them and then they won't fix the roof, or did they not fix the roof? I don't know, but we're not being smart about that. And right there, I was like, okay, this guy loves to showboat. They brought out quite literally an actor. I mean, this is during the press conference, who was dressed as Abraham Lincoln. And I was like, these are a very unserious group of people. And it's all about political theater. They literally brought out an actor during a press conference to act as Abraham Lincoln. And it was just so shocking to me. And after that moment, I was like, he's a showboater. He loves to put on a show. And yes, this bill is awful, but it's awful for so many other reasons outside of the fact that it's named after a convicted murderer who threw somebody down an elevator shaft head first. You could have argued the substance. You could have been stronger. There are strong Republicans, and they're suing actually the state right now over the budget and how it was passed in a very shady way. But David, sorry, cut you off. But
no,
yeah.
you're fine. You're a digger, Kat. You like to dig deep into these things, and I really appreciate that, because it goes to show you how broken we are. Because, like you said, it's bad acting, it's political theater. Here's the nuts and bolts of it. Illinois has a governor in J.B. Pritzker that has not provided his agency. So when you're the governor, you make about 1,000 hires. You have all these different agencies that are under the executive branch, no different than the federal. You've got the executive, legislative, and judicial branches in the state government. Here you have a governor for 7 years that has been unwilling to provide his agencies the data, the statistical data that is needed. Know your numbers, right? You got to know your numbers. If you don't know how many people are visiting New Salem, figure it out. It's like, it just wears me out that people, well, first of all, we're not governed by the smartest people, and I'm convinced of that. But they don't know their numbers. And part of the reason they don't know their numbers, like Susan Mendoza, our state comptroller, says that she cannot prepare her annual report until the Auditor General submits his data. The Auditor General will say that the agencies under the governor will not report. Kat, that's the definition of broken, but it's more than just broken. It's corruption. No different than the bill being pushed through and, other bills being gutted. I mean, I don't know all the technology or all the terminology, I should say, of what transpires during this session. But I know one thing. It doesn't take a rocket scientist like Elon Musk to take a look at it to figure out that it's broken. We don't even start having a Department of Government Efficiency in Illinois because we're just as broken as the $37 trillion in debt that our federal government has. And that's what Steve McClure, if Steve McClure really wants to, if any one of these representatives, especially my friends and brothers in the Freedom Caucus, if they want to attack that podium, all you have to go up to that podium and say, it's pretty simple. We have $10 billion in interest accruing against our pension debt every year. And we have yet to appropriate the money needed to pay our interest payment. So we don't even make our full interest payment on our debt. Kat, yeah. That's like you going out and just always running up your credit cards and never, ever paying the minimum payment. Can you imagine what the interest is like?
Absolutely. And like the pension issue with tier 1, tier 2. So there's been a lot of Band-Aid fixes, and that's what I call tier 2, is it's a Band-Aid fix, and they're trying to get rid of that. That was an attempt to address the pension crisis. So tier 2 is just like a slightly less pension package, I guess, is how I'd explain it. And they're all up in arms about it, the teachers union and things like that in Springfield, and they're trying to do away with the tier 2. But listen, we need to do this because we can't keep giving out these exorbitant pensions to people because we're in pension debt. We have a pension liability. I don't know how much it is. Is it 130 billion, something like that?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, but it's somewhere in excess of 130 billion. It could be, depending on your source, Wire Point's Illinois policy, it could rise up to 180 billion. It's been underfunded, unfunded since the days of Jim Egger and the Egger ramp going all the way back to 2001. No, we created a debacle. And unfortunately, whether it's at the federal level or the state level, or even the municipal level, or county government, we're not addressing the root.
Yeah.
You're a digger. You're a digger. You like to dig. You got to go to the root. You got to go to the root.
That he was talking about, the Eddie Thomas Act, right? The bill.
Yeah.
He didn't get to the root. Really, he was going after the name, and it was named after a convicted felon, which is, But the root problem here is, how is this going to, you're going to force them to kind of, the Department of Corrections, which is to provide a bunch of data points about hospice care, who they're providing care to. And yes, they should be doing that. But really what's ultimately going to happen is it's loaded with bureaucracy, and you want them to produce all of this. And that's going to be busy work that will cost the taxpayer dollars, taxpayers' money. And really what they should be focused on is keeping the prison safe, secure, and cost effective. You know what I mean? Yep. And they can barely even focus on that. The Department of Corrections, there's all kinds of cases where these prisons are not safe. There's contraband coming in, loads of contraband, and you want them to pretty much act like busy bees and provide you a bunch of data points about who exactly is getting care. So what the bill would do, it's like basic info about the inmates, which is already like something that they should be doing, right? And probably something they already do. So this is duplicative. And you're just going to assign people to do more busy work. And that's going to cost taxpayer dollars within the Department of Corrections, because you got to hire more people to do this and give it to the and put it into a nice little bow.
Increase the size of government units. Just keep building government.
And they want to know how many inmates died in custody, all of this stuff. So all of this stuff is stuff that the Department of Corrections should have been doing anyway. And so this is just a duplicative bill, but also you just want to grow and you want an excuse to grow the bureaucracy even more with all of these Department of Correction employees to be assigned to fulfill the requirements of this bill, which should already be fulfilled. What do you mean? You don't already collect basic info like gender and age from your inmates? That's BS. I know you do. You just want an excuse for more bureaucracy. And I would have loved to seen Steve McClure take to the floor and actually talk about the substance and the root of what this bill was really about. But he talked about the Eddie Thomas name, which is what it is. It's terrible. We all know that. But let's get to the root of the problem. Which I also want to get your take on the whole Elon Donald Trump debacle here, because people are saying, hey, Elon and Donald Trump need to make up. This is trivial. If they are friends, then they should agree to disagree and to move on. Your thoughts here, David?
I'm going to give it, obviously, let's wait till the day's out. I said it from the moment that I heard. I was on a text thread. I think you were on that text thread. I said this is political theater and played very well by Trump and Elon. Kat, this is a shtick. They are drawing out. Look at what they've done. They've been already able to get Eric Swalwell, or whatever his name is, Fang's boyfriend.
The Chinese banger.
They've been able to get Democrats to start buying Teslas again and calling for Epstein files to be released. It's brilliance, because now the Democrats, it's what is going to be the reaction. And a lot of people said, well, why did they take it publicly? Because these people can't help themselves. They love to live vicariously on social media, whether it's the legacy media, the propaganda media. I say, let's give it till today. Obviously, it sounds like there's a scheduled call between Elon and Trump. I don't even know what that's about. I'm just telling you, no different than my experience at January 6th. I know political theater when I see it. And this is good that our side is finally participating in a little bit of this political theater. Because how do you sometimes you fight fire with fire. And there's a lot that needs to get done unequivocally, without doubt. The big, beautiful bill, which is not the big, perfect bill. It's the big, beautiful bill, because it's beautiful, as Donald Trump would say.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be passed. The economy implodes. It doesn't happen any other way. I think G.C. Drano said it best. You have the tariff battles, you have the court battles, you have deportation battles, legislation battles, the deep state backstabbing in your agencies, as you said earlier. The only reason Donald Trump ever went into the presidency, or even considered a run for the presidency, was because he understood the swamp. What we're talking about, the Steve McClures, the entire zeitgeist of the current government, cultural government, is broken at all levels. I said that earlier. And the deep state is behind it. There's a deep state right here in Bloomington Normal, where you and I are, the Central Illinois, where we reside. Springfield, deep state. Washington, D.C., literally the swamp of all swamps. But the deep state is backstabbing in our agencies. That's politics in the constitutional republic. You got to realize this is part of what makes us unique as a country. A constitutional republic. We have these fights. I would rather know what's happening on a instantaneous basis within our government. We didn't know any of this under the Biden regime.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was in the dark. Everything was a secret. Everything was a lie. You just played Jean-Claude Van Damme and her press, as the press secretary, and her inability to tell the truth ever. Nothing that came out of her mouth was truthful. And that reminds me of someone else that we obviously try to avoid every day, is the devil. The devil can't tell the truth. But the deep state, or the That's just part of it. The republic that was rotted for within decades is what he says. This has been going on for years and years and years.
Mhm.
But anyone with a functioning brain, this once again is DC Drano, can see how this is going to transform America in less than a year. Kat, we're going to be back better. You know, when they talked about Build Back Better, you're going to see Make America Great Again. By next summer, America will be almost unrecognizable compared to where it was a year ago. The border wall will be almost complete. Our national coffers will be filled with hundreds of billions of dollars from tariffs. Americans will be paying the lowest taxes of their lives. There will be millions of fewer illegal aliens. Crime will be at record lows, and the economy will be booming with all these new manufacturing jobs that got brought back from overseas. Rough seas now, which is what we're going through. I don't know how anybody could ever fathom that we were going to come out of the last 4 years and we weren't going to be selling. And you know, the old saying, you're either going into a storm, you're in a storm, or you're coming out of a storm, and it keeps cycling. Kat, we're in a storm. And the storm came on January 20th of this year, and he brought all the ammunition and the howitzers, and he started to expose what is happening. That's the sad part about our state. We don't have anybody to really expose it. I applaud the Freedom Caucus for filing a lawsuit against this bill that was just pushed through in the dead of night. It's a step. But, you know, Kat, what I want to see is I want to see people tearing off their garments, standing on the house floor, pounding on the desk like Jeannie Ives used to do. You know, I give Jeannie credit for that. She goes, okay, before we pass this bill, let's go through it line by line. And of course, there was 3,000 pages, so they'd be there in forever. But, you know, there are rough seas, and it will lead to calm seas later. And just in time, just imagine this. Everything that Trump is currently doing with Elon Musk, with everyone else that's part of his inner circle, and believe me, Elon is part of Trump's inner circle. You're not dancing, you're not having little X dance all the way to Marine One a month ago, and then suddenly you guys are the world's worst enemies. You're not letting your son, little X, be around what you believe is a child predator in having files on Epstein. All of it is a stick. That's my belief. I don't know. It might be legitimate. I think it just reeks of the fact that they are playing the Democrat Party in the swamp.
Yeah, and maybe they are. I really hope that would be the case, because it'd be great if they got along. I mean, I have always said that I don't like Elon Musk.
Yeah,
and it's because I'm very resistant to the type of technology that he wants to introduce. I think that he is a bit of a humanist, has come out publicly, has talked about him being an atheist. Now he has kind of shifted gears and said that I'm a cultural Christian.
There's hope for everyone.
What the hell that means, right? Cultural Christian. Do you believe there's a God or not? And
pray for his soul. Pray for him. Pray for him. Yeah.
But I worry about him being in Trump's inner circle. This guy has abused the H-1B visa system. He is very much for this technology that could be potentially dangerous to humankind, robot, artificial intelligence. And I use ChatGPT all the time. Grok, I love it. It's a lot of fun, and I think that there could be a use for it.
He is pro-life, though, Kat. He
Yes.
doesn't believe he's pro-life.
Yeah, he's what he calls cultural Christian.
And I don't even know his standing.
The fact that there is a God that created the earth.
Well, Jews aren't Christians.
Yeah.
Jews aren't Christians, and there's plenty of good practicing Jews, faithful Jews around the world. I would say on Elon, he is a strange dude. There's no question about it. I mean, I don't think that you and I can even start to begin what's going on inside of this guy's head. But I believe that he speaks of things that are important, like the fact that we have to build upon the base of our economy to make sure that we are replenishing people to be part of this Make America Great Again. We need more bodies. We need people having babies. And Elon is adamant about that. We've got to populate the world. He's not talking about depopulation, which is what they want to do on the other side of the aisle. So I guess you're never going to get a perfect person in government, whether it's Elon, Donald Trump. But what we can do is we can pray for Elon and hope that he truly does bow his knee to the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll have to see what happens. Like you said, they're supposed to have a phone call today, and it could just all be political theater. And I think that with this Epstein thing, because now there's calls to release the Epstein files, and Elon making comments about Trump being on the Epstein files or whatever. Yes, Donald Trump, and this has been a thing. Like, you would think that, okay, they tried to jail this guy. They convicted him of 30 plus felonies, Donald Trump. You would think that if he was incriminated or had a criminal enterprise with Jeffrey Epstein, they would have used that against President Donald Trump.
Yeah, every day of the day and twice on Sunday. They would have been. That would have been our. They have no. Elon. It said Donald's. Donald made the comment. I said, "Get out of here." I got my little Donald out here. This is what he told Elon. You're fired. You're fired.
Well, and he said this to Jeffrey Epstein as well. Of course, he's on some, list that maybe Jeffrey Epstein had, not the client list, but Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, he resided in Palm Beach, and he had a bunch of big names. And I believe Donald Trump told him, "You got to get out of here because you're being creepy around young girls at Mar-a-Lago."
Jeffrey Epstein, yes.
Yeah, kicked Jeffrey.
Not Elon Musk.
Not
Elon Musk is not creepy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
hey, Kat, do you know what Trump's putting out on True Social this morning?
What's that?
Well, I'll just read it to you real quick. And because this defines President Donald J. Trump. He doesn't, nothing sticks to him. They call him Teflon Don. Well, that was an old organized crime person named Teflon Don, but he's definitely Teflon. Nothing sticks to him. Prices are down, income is up, our border is closed, gasoline is cheap, inflation is dead, our country is booming, companies are pouring into America like never before. And prior to that, he talked about the New York Times and the Washington Post, how they're talking about polls, and of course, vastly, their polls show Trump's popularity is down. Of course it is, because they're polling Democrats. I mean, net of it is, my point being, he's not talking about Elon today.
Yeah.
That was yesterday. He pivots better than any person that I mean, you got the flag behind it. There's a reason we voted this guy in, because this country needed something to turn the tide.
I think there is an argument to be made that the tax cuts are risky, but it just goes to show you, and I think really what they're trying to do here, if this is a political theater shtick and they're in on it together,
Frank,
if they're trying to weed out the people who truly have this ideology behind them, that that I'm entitled to your money.
Yep.
And they're trying to weed out those types of people who are against this big, beautiful bill, because the only reason why I'd be against it is because you hold that ideology that, hey, I'm entitled to your tax money, and if I don't get your tax money, that's going to cause us to have a deficit, and we need to raise the rates. That's really what their position is that we need to raise the rates. And yes, we have a big deficit, and we need to address the forever ticking
debt clock.
Debt clock, right? We need to address that, but
ongoing.
They're not looking at how beneficial tax cuts actually are. Once you provide these tax cuts, the economy is going to come back better. It's going to make America better. So, David, we're going to go, but tell us about the David Paul Blumenshine Show. Tell us a little bit about it, where we can find it, and who you are for anybody who's just tuning in.
Okay, the DPB Show is on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can always listen or view it at Facebook, X, Rumble, and YouTube. The DPB Show 4:00, runs for an hour. I go an hour, and it's just part of continuing to push the needle, like Conservative Cat, like my friend Ryan Mack, who joins me on the show, the Ryan Mack Show. Also, he's part of Boiling Point Live. My daughter, Hannah, she's got her thing. Ty Smith has his thing. We've got a lot of great young talent, which ultimately was the only thing I wanted to do by having the DPB show, was exposing corruption. And that's what we talk about.
Mm-hmm. Well,
On Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 to 5.
That's David Paul Blumenshine at the DPB Show. Type it in your search bar right now. Go subscribe the DPB Show on YouTube. You can follow him on Rumble, X, Facebook, and it streams to all of those platforms. David, thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Cat, I love being here. Go Conservative Cat.
Woohoo!
All right.
Team Conservative Cat and Team Trump. Yes, Ryan. So glad that you guys joined me. I know you've got options. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel today. We're going to be back bright and early Monday morning, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Central Time. As always, bye-bye, guys. Be blessed, and I love you.